Marcus Wellington stood at attention outside the embassy gates, his red ceremonial uniform pristine under the morning sun. To most people walking by, he looked like just another royal guard doing his duty. They saw the shiny boots, the formal hat, and the traditional rifle he carried. What they didn't see was the years of elite military training hidden beneath that colorful uniform. The morning started like any other Tuesday. Marcus had been protecting the embassy for 3 years now, and he knew every corner, every window, and every possible entry point. His sharp eyes constantly scanned the street, watching for anything unusual. Cars passed by, people hurried to work, and everything seemed normal, but something felt different today. Marcus noticed a white van that had been parked across the street for over an hour. The windows were tinted dark and nobody had gotten out. His training kicked in immediately. Years ago, when he served in the Special Forces, his commanding officer always said, "Trust your instincts." Right now, those instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Marcus reached for his radio to report the suspicious vehicle to his supervisor. Before he could speak, he heard the screech of tires. 3 black SUVs came racing down the street from different directions. His heart rate increased, but his face remained calm. This was definitely not a normal morning anymore. The vehicles stopped suddenly, surrounding the embassy entrance. Men in black tactical gear jumped out, moving with military precision. They wore helmets, bulletproof vests, and carried automatic weapons. The letters SWAT were clearly visible on their uniforms. Marcus counted 12 officers in total, all pointing their weapons in his direction. "Drop your weapon and get on the ground now," shouted the team leader through a megaphone. His voice echoed off the embassy walls. "This is a federal operation." Marcus remained perfectly still, his mind racing. Something was terribly wrong with this picture. Real SWAT teams followed proper procedures. They would have contacted embassy security first. They would have shown proper identification. They would have given him time to verify their authority through official channels. The team leader stepped forward, his finger on the trigger of his assault rifle. "I said drop your weapon, soldier boy. We have intelligence that this embassy is harboring terrorists." Marcus knew this was a lie. The embassy was one of the most secure buildings in the city. Every person who entered was thoroughly screened. Every package was inspected. Every visitor was logged and monitored. If there were real terrorists inside, he would have been the first to know about it. "I need to see your official warrant and identification," Marcus called out, his voice steady and professional. Embassy security protocols require proper documentation for any law enforcement action. The fake SWAT team leader laughed loudly. "You're in no position to make demands, pretty boy. This is your last warning." Marcus noticed several things that confirmed his suspicions. First, their tactical gear was slightly outdated. Second, their formation was sloppy compared to real SWAT standards. Third, and most importantly, he spotted a small tattoo on one officer's neck that he recognized from intelligence briefings about known criminals. These weren't law enforcement officers at all. They were highly trained mercenaries or criminals disguised as SWAT team members. Their plan was probably to storm the embassy, steal classified documents, or worse. They had chosen to strike during the morning shift change when security might be at its weakest. But they had made one critical mistake. They had assumed that the royal guard standing at the gate was just for show. They thought his ceremonial uniform meant he was harmless. They had no idea that Marcus Wellington was a former Special Forces operative who had served in 3 combat zones before taking this seemingly quiet job. Marcus slowly reached for his radio again, pretending to comply with their demands. "Control, this is Gate 1. We have a code red situation. 12 armed individuals claiming to be federal agents are attempting unauthorized entry." "What are you doing?" screamed the fake team leader. "I told you to drop everything." Marcus smiled slightly. The real game was about to begin. The fake SWAT team leader's patience finally snapped. "Take him down," he shouted to his men. "We don't have time for this nonsense." 2 officers rushed toward Marcus, their weapons raised and ready to fire. They moved fast, but Marcus had been expecting this moment. In one smooth motion, he dove behind the concrete barrier next to the embassy gate. Bullets cracked through the air where he had been standing just seconds before. Marcus's mind shifted into combat mode instantly. All those years of Special Forces training came flooding back. He remembered his instructor's words during urban warfare exercises. Use your environment, stay calm, and always think 3 moves ahead. The embassy courtyard provided excellent cover with its decorative walls and pillars. Marcus knew every inch of this area, because he had studied it for security purposes. What the attackers didn't realize was that he had also planned defensive strategies for exactly this type of situation. "Spread out and flank him," ordered the team leader. "He's just one man with an old rifle." Marcus almost laughed at their mistake. Yes, he carried a ceremonial rifle, but that wasn't his only weapon. Hidden beneath his formal jacket was a modern pistol with extra ammunition. More importantly, the embassy's security system was now fully activated thanks to his radio call. 4 of the fake officers moved to his left while 3 others went right. They were trying to surround him, which was a good strategy against a normal person. Unfortunately for them, Marcus had faced much worse odds in Afghanistan and Somalia. He waited until the left group was close enough, then suddenly appeared from behind a marble pillar. His first shot was perfect, hitting the lead attacker in the shoulder and spinning him around. The man's weapon flew from his hands and clattered across the stone courtyard. Before the others could react, Marcus disappeared again behind another section of cover. He moved like a ghost, using the embassy's architecture to stay hidden while getting closer to his targets. "Where is he?" shouted one of the attackers, panic creeping into his voice. "I can't see him." "He's over there by the fountain," another one replied, pointing his weapon in the wrong direction. Marcus was actually crouched behind a decorative statue, watching their confused movements. These men were trained for direct assault, not for fighting a single skilled opponent who knew the terrain perfectly. The radio in Marcus's ear crackled to life. "Gate 1, this is Control. Embassy is now in full lockdown. Real SWAT team has been contacted and is en route. Estimated arrival in 8 minutes. 8 minutes felt like a lifetime when facing 11 armed attackers, but Marcus had survived longer odds before. He just needed to keep them busy and prevent them from entering the embassy building where innocent staff members were now hiding in secure rooms. The fake team leader was getting frustrated with his men's inability to corner one guard. "Forget the fancy tactics," he screamed. "Everyone charge at once. He can't shoot all of us." This was exactly what Marcus had been hoping for. When enemies panic, they make mistakes. When they make mistakes, they become vulnerable. The remaining attackers began running toward his position from multiple directions. Marcus counted their movements carefully, then made his next move. He sprinted toward the embassy's front steps, drawing their fire away from any windows where staff members might be watching. Bullets sparked off the stone steps as Marcus rolled and took cover behind a large bronze statue of a diplomat. The attackers were now clustered together in the courtyard center, making them perfect targets for what he planned next. Marcus pulled a small device from his belt and pressed a button. Suddenly, the embassy's sprinkler system activated, sending powerful jets of water across the entire courtyard. The attackers were instantly soaked, their vision impaired by the spray. "What the hell is happening?" one of them shouted, wiping water from his face. That moment of confusion was all Marcus needed. He emerged from cover and fired 3 precise shots, each one finding its target. 3 more attackers went down, clutching wounded arms and legs. Marcus aimed to disable, not kill, because he wanted answers about who had sent them. The remaining 8 men were now angry, wet, and realizing that their target was far more dangerous than they had expected. Their simple plan was falling apart rapidly. "This isn't working," called out one of the younger attackers. "Maybe we should retreat." "Nobody retreats," roared the team leader. "We have a job to finish." But Marcus could see doubt spreading through their ranks. They had expected an easy victory against a ceremonial guard. Instead, they were facing a trained warrior who was picking them apart one by one. The sound of approaching sirens began echoing through the city streets. The real authorities were getting closer, and everyone in the courtyard could hear them coming. The sound of sirens grew louder with each passing second, but Marcus knew 8 minutes could feel like hours in a firefight. The remaining fake SWAT members were becoming more desperate and dangerous as they realized their mission was failing. "We need to get inside that building now," the team leader shouted over the noise of the sprinklers. "If we can take hostages, we can still salvage this operation." Marcus couldn't let that happen. The embassy housed dozens of innocent workers, including some visiting diplomats and their families. His job was to protect them, and he would do whatever it took to keep these criminals outside. The attackers changed their strategy, focusing less on capturing Marcus and more on reaching the embassy's main entrance. They provided covering fire for each other while advancing toward the heavy oak doors. Marcus realized he needed to be more aggressive. Defensive tactics had worked so far, but now he had to actively stop their advance. He spotted a maintenance shed near the embassy's side wall and sprinted toward it while bullets whizzed past his head. Inside the shed, Marcus found exactly what he was looking for. The embassy's groundskeeping equipment included several useful items that could become weapons in the right hands. He grabbed a container of industrial fertilizer and a small tank of propane used for the outdoor heaters. Years of special forces training had taught him how to create diversions using everyday materials. Marcus quickly assembled an improvised flashbang device using items from the shed. It wouldn't be as powerful as military-grade equipment, but it would be enough to disorient his attackers. He waited until 5 of the remaining men were clustered near the embassy's front steps, then tossed his homemade device into their midst. The explosion was smaller than a real flashbang, but the sudden bright light and loud noise in the confined courtyard had the desired effect. "I can't see," screamed one attacker, stumbling backward with his hands over his eyes. "My ears are ringing," shouted another, firing his weapon wildly in random directions. Marcus used their confusion to advance quickly across the courtyard. His next target was the team leader, who seemed to be the only one maintaining any composure despite the chaos around him. The team leader spotted Marcus approaching and raised his rifle, but Marcus was already moving in an unpredictable zigzag pattern. The criminals' shots missed their target, striking the embassy's decorative stonework instead. Marcus dove low and tackled the team leader around the waist, sending both men crashing into the ornamental garden beside the embassy steps. They rolled across the wet grass, each trying to gain control of the other's weapon. The fake SWAT leader was strong and well-trained, but Marcus had fought hand-to-hand combat with some of the world's most dangerous people. He used a joint lock technique to force his opponent to drop the rifle, then followed up with a precise strike that left the man gasping for breath. "Who sent you?" Marcus demanded, pressing his advantage. "What did you really want from the embassy?" The team leader just glared at him with hatred, refusing to answer. Before Marcus could press for more information, he heard footsteps approaching from behind. 3 more attackers were closing in on his position. Marcus grabbed the fallen rifle and rolled away just as bullets started flying again. He found cover behind a large fountain and assessed the situation. 4 attackers were still active, plus the wounded team leader who was slowly getting back to his feet. The sirens were very close now, probably less than 2 minutes away. These criminals would soon face a choice between fighting real law enforcement officers or trying to escape. Marcus suspected they would choose escape, which meant they might get desperate enough to do something really dangerous. "Listen up," Marcus called out to the remaining attackers. "Real police are almost here. You can surrender now and live to see tomorrow, or you can keep fighting and see how that works out for you." "Shut up," screamed one of them. "We're not afraid of some local cops." But Marcus could hear the uncertainty in the man's voice. These criminals had planned a quick strike against what they thought would be easy opposition. Now they were facing a skilled defender, wounded teammates, and the arrival of legitimate authorities. The team leader struggled to his feet and grabbed a backup pistol from his belt. Blood was running down his face from where he had hit the ground, and his eyes showed a mixture of rage and desperation. "Change of plans," he announced to his remaining men. "We grab the guard and use him as a shield to get out of here." Marcus smiled grimly. That was exactly the kind of mistake he had been hoping they would make. Trying to capture him would require them to get close enough for hand-to-hand combat, which was where he held every advantage. "Come and try it," he muttered under his breath, checking his remaining ammunition and preparing for the final confrontation. The team leader's desperate plan to capture Marcus as a hostage was about to backfire spectacularly. As the 4 remaining attackers rushed toward his position by the fountain, Marcus calmly calculated the distance, timing, and angles he would need for what came next. The first attacker reached the fountain and leaped over the marble edge, expecting to tackle Marcus to the ground. Instead, he found himself grabbing empty air as Marcus rolled sideways and swept the man's legs with a perfectly timed kick. The attacker crashed face first into the fountain's stone base with a sickening thud. The second man tried to learn from his teammate's mistake by approaching more cautiously, his weapon trained on where Marcus had been. But Marcus was already moving again, using the fountain's circular design to stay just out of sight while positioning himself for a counterattack. Marcus appeared suddenly from the opposite side and grabbed the man's rifle barrel, forcing it upward just as the trigger was pulled. The shot went harmlessly into the sky while Marcus delivered a sharp elbow strike to the attacker's ribs. The man doubled over in pain and dropped his weapon. 2 down, 2 to go, Marcus said quietly to himself, quickly scanning for the remaining threats. The third attacker had learned from watching his teammates fail. Instead of rushing in blindly, he took cover behind a decorative pillar and tried to get a clear shot at Marcus. This showed better tactical thinking, but Marcus had been expecting exactly this type of smart response. Marcus grabbed a handful of loose stones from the fountain's decorative border and threw them in a wide arc toward the pillar. The small rocks clattered across the courtyard, creating multiple sounds that made it impossible for the hidden attacker to pinpoint Marcus's exact location. While the man was confused by the noise, Marcus sprinted in a low crouch toward a different section of cover. He was no longer where the attacker expected him to be, which gave him a crucial advantage for planning his next move. The team leader was becoming increasingly frustrated as he watched his carefully chosen men being systematically defeated by a single opponent. "Stop playing games with him," he screamed. "Just shoot everything. Spray the whole area." This was another critical mistake. Panic firing would waste ammunition and create chaos that Marcus could exploit. The remaining 2 attackers began shooting wildly at every shadow and movement, their bullets striking stone, metal, and water but never finding their intended target. Marcus waited patiently for them to exhaust their current magazines. When he heard the distinctive clicking sounds of empty weapons, he made his move. He vaulted over a low wall and sprinted directly toward the third attacker's position. The man was frantically trying to reload his rifle when Marcus appeared in front of him like an avenging ghost. A single precise punch to the jaw sent the attacker sprawling unconscious across the wet courtyard stones. Now only the team leader remained standing, and he was backing toward the embassy gates with his pistol raised. His face showed a mixture of disbelief and growing terror, as he realized that his entire operation had been destroyed by one man in a colorful uniform. "This is impossible," he shouted, his voice cracking with stress. "You're supposed to be just a ceremonial guard." "Who are you, really?" Marcus advanced slowly, his own weapon trained steadily on the team leader. "I'm exactly what I appear to be. I'm a royal guard doing my job. The problem is that you assumed my job was easy." The distant sirens were now very close, probably just around the corner. The team leader's eyes darted toward the street, calculating whether he could reach his escape vehicle before the real authorities arrived. "Don't even think about it," Marcus warned. "Your transportation is probably surrounded by now. Real SWAT teams don't just come from one direction." As if to prove his point, the sound of multiple vehicles could be heard approaching from several different streets. The legitimate law enforcement response was thorough and professional, unlike the amateur operation that had just failed so completely. The team leader's shoulders sagged as he realized his situation was hopeless. His carefully planned assault had become a total disaster. His men were wounded or unconscious, his escape routes were cut off, and he was facing a defender who had proven far more capable than anyone could have anticipated. "I surrender," he said quietly, slowly lowering his weapon to the ground. Marcus kept his pistol trained on the man while using his radio. "Control, this is Gate 1. Threat has been neutralized. I have 1 conscious suspect ready for custody and multiple wounded individuals requiring medical attention." "Copy that, Gate 1. Outstanding work. Medical and law enforcement units are entering the embassy grounds." Now the first real police cars rounded the corner just as Marcus finished securing the team leader with plastic zip ties from his equipment belt. The contrast between the legitimate officers and the fake SWAT team was immediately obvious in their professional approach and proper identification. "Procedures," Marcus finally allowed himself to relax slightly as he watched the real authorities take control of the scene. But he knew this wasn't over. Someone had sent these criminals to attack the embassy, and finding out who was behind it would be the next challenge. Within minutes, the embassy courtyard was filled with legitimate law enforcement officers, paramedics, and security personnel. Marcus watched as the wounded attackers received medical treatment while being placed under arrest. The contrast between the professional response and the chaotic assault he had just repelled was striking. Detective Sarah Chen, the lead investigator from the city's anti-terrorism unit, approached Marcus as he was giving his initial statement to the responding officers. She was a small woman with sharp eyes that seemed to notice every detail around her. "Mr. Wellington," she said, extending her hand. "I've heard some interesting things about what happened here today. Mind walking me through the events one more time?" Marcus appreciated her direct approach. He guided her through the courtyard, pointing out the various locations where the fight had taken place. As they walked, Detective Chen took detailed notes and photographed the evidence. "These weren't random criminals," she observed, examining the fake SWAT gear left scattered around the area. "This equipment is expensive and professional grade. Someone invested serious money in this operation." Marcus nodded in agreement. "That's what bothered me from the beginning. Real SWAT teams follow protocols. These men knew enough to look authentic, but they missed the important details that matter to someone with military experience." Detective Chen studied the unconscious team leader, who was now handcuffed to a stretcher while medics checked his injuries. "What do you think they were really after? The embassy doesn't keep large amounts of cash or easily stolen valuables." "Information," Marcus replied without hesitation. "This embassy processes visa applications for several high-profile government officials and business leaders. Those files contain travel schedules, personal details, and security arrangements that would be very valuable to the right buyer." The detective's eyes sharpened with interest. Industrial espionage? Foreign intelligence? Or something more personal like kidnapping plans? Before Marcus could answer, one of the wounded attackers began talking loudly as the medics treated his shoulder wound. The pain medication was making him careless with his words. "This wasn't supposed to happen," the man complained. "The boss said it would be easy money. Just grab some files and get out. Nobody mentioned anything about fighting a real soldier." Detective Chen immediately moved closer to listen, while Marcus followed with growing curiosity. This was the first real clue about who might have organized the attack. "What boss?" the detective asked the wounded man. "Who hired your team?" The attacker's eyes went wide as he realized his mistake. I don't know what you're talking about. I want a lawyer, but the damage was already done." Detective Chen exchanged a meaningful look with Marcus, who understood exactly what she was thinking. This wasn't a random crime. Someone with money and connections had specifically targeted the embassy. A federal agent in a dark suit approached their group. Agent Rodriguez from the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force had been monitoring the situation from the moment the first emergency call was made. "Detective Chen, Mr. Wellington," he said formally, "we need to discuss the implications of what happened here today. This attack shows a level of planning and resources that suggest organized crime or foreign intelligence involvement." Marcus was curious about the federal interest. "Agent Rodriguez, what makes you think this goes beyond a simple robbery attempt?" The FBI agent pulled out his tablet and showed them surveillance photos taken from traffic cameras around the embassy. "These men have been watching this location for at least 2 weeks. They knew your schedule, the embassy's security procedures, and the best time to attack. That kind of intelligence gathering requires serious organization." Detective Chen studied the photos carefully. "Do we have any identification on the team leader yet?" "His fingerprints match a man named Victor Kozlov," Agent Rodriguez replied. "He's a former military contractor with connections to several international criminal organizations. He doesn't work cheap and he doesn't work alone." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. If professional criminals were targeting the embassy, this attack might be just the beginning of a larger operation. "Agent Rodriguez, do you think they'll try again?" "Not with the same approach," the FBI agent said grimly. "But whoever hired Kozlov has invested too much money to give up after one failure. They'll probably try a different strategy next time." The three of them walked toward the embassy building, where staff members were being interviewed about any suspicious activities they might have noticed in recent weeks. The ambassador himself came out to personally thank Marcus for protecting the embassy and its people. "Mr. Wellington," the ambassador said warmly, "your actions today probably saved lives. The embassy is extremely grateful for your service." Marcus accepted the thanks professionally, but his mind was already working on the bigger picture. If Victor Kozlov was involved, this attack was definitely part of something larger and more dangerous. Detective Chen's phone rang, and she stepped away to take the call. When she returned, her expression was serious. "That was the hospital. One of the wounded attackers is asking to make a deal. He says he has information about who hired them, but he wants protection in exchange." Agent Rodriguez and Marcus looked at each other. This could be the break they needed to understand who was behind the attack and prevent future attempts. "What kind of protection is he asking for?" Marcus inquired. Witness Protection Program, Detective Chen replied. He claims his employer has a long reach and won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who talks. The investigation was just beginning, but Marcus already knew that his quiet job as a ceremonial guard had suddenly become much more complicated and dangerous. The hospital interview room was sterile and cold, with armed guards stationed outside the door. The wounded attacker, who identified himself as Danny Morrison, sat handcuffed to his bed while Detective Chen, Agent Rodriguez, and Marcus listened to his story. "You don't understand what you're dealing with," Morrison said nervously, his eyes constantly darting toward the window. "This wasn't just about stealing some files. We were hired to create a distraction while the real operation happened somewhere else." Agent Rodriguez leaned forward with interest. "What real operation? What are you talking about?" Morrison hesitated, clearly struggling with fear and the decision to cooperate. "There's a diplomatic convoy scheduled to leave the embassy tomorrow morning. 3 armored vehicles carrying some very important people to a secret meeting at the airport." Marcus felt his blood run cold. "You're saying the attack on the embassy was meant to draw security attention away from the convoy?" "Exactly," Morrison confirmed. "While every available police unit was responding to our fake SWAT assault, the real target would be completely vulnerable. No backup, no extra protection, just the standard escort that could be easily overwhelmed." Detective Chen was already reaching for her phone. "We need to contact embassy security immediately and verify this convoy information." Agent Rodriguez stopped her with a gesture. "Wait, if we alert too many people, word might get back to whoever is planning this. We need to be very careful about who we trust with this information." Morrison continued his story with growing urgency. "The man who hired us goes by the name Alexander Petrov. He's not someone you want to cross. Russian accent, expensive suits, and enough money to hire teams like ours without blinking. He said this job would set us up for life." Marcus studied Morrison's face carefully, using his military experience to judge whether the man was telling the truth. "What exactly is supposed to happen to this convoy? Kidnapping? Assassination? Robbery?" "I honestly don't know," Morrison admitted. "Petrov compartmentalized everything. We only knew our part of the plan. But he mentioned something about sending a message that would change international relations forever." The 3 investigators exchanged worried glances. This was sounding less like ordinary crime and more like an act of terrorism or international espionage. Agent Rodriguez stepped outside to make some secure phone calls while Detective Chen continued questioning Morrison. Marcus remained silent, his mind working through the tactical implications of what they had learned. If tomorrow's convoy was the real target, they had less than 18 hours to prepare an effective response. The attackers would be expecting light security, because they assumed the embassy assault would have drawn away additional resources. Agent Rodriguez returned with a grim expression. "I've confirmed the convoy details through secure channels. 3 vehicles, 5 VIPs including a deputy foreign minister and 2 trade negotiators. The meeting they're attending involves a major international trade agreement worth billions of dollars. That's motive enough for several different groups," Detective Chen observed. "Foreign governments, criminal organizations, or terrorist cells could all benefit from disrupting those negotiations." Marcus had been quietly analyzing the tactical situation. "If I were planning to hit that convoy, I would choose the route between the embassy and the airport. There are several locations where traffic naturally slows down and escape routes are available." "Morrison," Agent Rodriguez said firmly, "we need everything you know about Petrov's other resources. How many men does he have? What kind of weapons? What vehicles?" Morrison looked even more frightened. "I only met him twice, and both times it was in different locations. But I saw at least 20 men during our briefing session. Military-grade equipment, professional coordination. This isn't some street gang operation." Detective Chen was studying a map of the city on her tablet. "The convoy route passes through downtown traffic, the industrial district, and then the highway to the airport. Any of those areas could be vulnerable to a well-planned ambush." Marcus pointed to a specific location on the map. "The underpass near the industrial district would be perfect for an ambush. Traffic slows down, limited visibility, and multiple escape routes through the warehouse district." Agent Rodriguez nodded in agreement. "That's exactly what I was thinking. We need to set up a counter-operation that protects the convoy without alerting the attackers that we know about their plan." "What if we change the convoy route at the last minute?" Detective Chen suggested. "Too risky," Marcus replied. If Petrov has intelligence sources inside the embassy or police department, he might learn about the change. Better to stick with the expected route but be ready for them. Agent Rodriguez was already making plans. We'll need a joint operation. FBI tactical team, local SWAT, and additional embassy security. But it has to look like normal convoy protection to avoid raising suspicions. Morrison spoke up again, his voice filled with desperation. You're making a mistake if you think this will be easy. Petrov doesn't make plans that can be stopped by a few extra police officers. He's got backup plans for his backup plans. Marcus looked directly at Morrison. Then you'd better tell us everything you can remember about those backup plans. Because tomorrow morning we're going to find out just how good his organization really is. The wounded criminal stared back at him for a long moment, then began talking about everything he could remember, from his brief association with Alexander Petrov's operation. Time was running out and they needed every advantage they could get. The next morning arrived gray and overcast, with light rain making the city streets slick and dangerous. Marcus stood at his usual post outside the embassy, but today everything was different. Hidden throughout the area were FBI agents, police snipers, and tactical teams all coordinated through carefully concealed communication networks. The convoy was scheduled to depart at exactly 9:30 in the morning. 3 black armored vehicles sat in the embassy courtyard, their engines running quietly while diplomatic security personnel made final preparations. To any observer, it looked like a routine high-security transport. Marcus's earpiece crackled with updates from Agent Rodriguez, who was coordinating the operation from a surveillance van 2 blocks away. All units report ready. Convoy will depart on schedule. Remember, we need to catch these criminals in the act to build a solid case. Detective Chen was positioned along the planned route with a team of undercover officers. Her job was to spot any suspicious activity and provide early warning if the ambush seemed to be starting earlier than expected. At 9:25, the convoy's passengers emerged from the embassy building. Marcus recognized the deputy foreign minister from news reports, along with several other officials whose faces had been in intelligence briefings. These people had no idea how much danger they were potentially facing. Gate 1 to control. Marcus spoke quietly into his radio. VIPs are boarding vehicles now. Everything appears normal from my position. The convoy began moving slowly through the embassy gates and onto the main street. Marcus watched them disappear around the corner, then quickly made his way to an unmarked police car where Detective Chen was waiting for him. Change of plans, she said as he got into the passenger seat. Agent Rodriguez wants you with the tactical response team. Your military experience might be crucial if things go wrong. They drove quickly through the city, following a parallel route that would put them near the suspected ambush location ahead of the convoy. Marcus studied the tactical maps on Chen's tablet, memorizing the layout of buildings, streets, and potential escape routes. The radio chatter indicated that the convoy was making good time through the downtown area. No suspicious activity had been reported by any of the surveillance teams positioned along the route. Maybe Morrison was wrong, Detective Chen suggested hopefully. Maybe there isn't going to be an attack after all. Marcus shook his head. Morrison was too scared to be lying, and someone like Petrov doesn't invest this much planning and resources just to change his mind at the last minute. As if responding to his words, Agent Rodriguez's voice came through the radio with urgent news. All units, we have movement in the industrial district. Multiple vehicles taking positions near the underpass. This is definitely happening. Detective Chen accelerated toward their destination while Marcus checked his equipment one final time. His ceremonial uniform had been replaced with tactical gear borrowed from the FBI, but he carried the same determination that had served him well during yesterday's embassy fight. They arrived at the tactical command position just as the convoy entered the industrial district. Through high-powered telescopes, Marcus could see the ambush being prepared exactly where he had predicted it would happen. 6 vehicles, reported the FBI sniper team, approximately 20 armed individuals. They're setting up a classic crossfire pattern designed to disable the convoy vehicles and extract specific passengers. Agent Rodriguez's voice was calm but tense. Convoy is 2 minutes from the kill zone. All units prepare for engagement on my signal. Marcus watched through binoculars as Alexander Petrov's men moved into their final positions. These weren't the same amateur criminals who had attacked the embassy yesterday. This team moved with military precision and carried serious firepower. The lead convoy vehicle entered the underpass right on schedule. For a moment, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the ambush exploded into action from 3 different directions. Go, 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 Agent Rodriguez commanded. The FBI tactical teams moved in from concealed positions while police units blocked the escape routes. Marcus found himself running toward the sound of gunfire alongside some of the best law enforcement officers in the country. But Petrov's men were ready for resistance. They had anticipated that law enforcement might be prepared and had brought enough firepower to fight their way out if necessary. The battle was intense and dangerous, with bullets flying between the concrete pillars of the underpass. Marcus used his special forces training to flank the ambush team's position, while the FBI agents provided covering fire. He spotted Alexander Petrov himself directing his men from behind an armored SUV, speaking rapidly into a radio. The fight lasted nearly 15 minutes before the superior numbers and coordination of the law enforcement response finally overwhelmed the criminals. When the shooting stopped, half of Petrov's men were wounded or captured, including Petrov himself. The convoy passengers were unharmed, though badly shaken by the experience. The diplomatic mission continued to the airport under even heavier security, while Marcus and the other officers secured the crime scene. Agent Rodriguez approached Marcus as the last of the criminals were being loaded into police vehicles. Outstanding work, Wellington. Your tactical input made the difference in how quickly we were able to end this. Marcus looked at the captured Alexander Petrov, who was glaring at him with obvious hatred. Do we know why he wanted to disrupt those trade negotiations? We're still investigating, Detective Chen replied. But initial intelligence suggests he was working for a foreign government that would lose billions if the trade agreement went through successfully. As they drove away from the scene, Marcus reflected on how quickly his quiet job as a ceremonial guard had turned into something much more complex and dangerous. Yesterday's embassy attack had been just the beginning of a larger international incident, but both times, he had been ready when duty called. Whether facing fake SWAT teams or international criminals, his training and determination had proven equal to the challenge. The Royal Guard uniform might look ceremonial, but the man wearing it was definitely not just for show.